Hi there and welcome back. I'm Lorraine Beata with Flip the Switch, and in this module we're going to discuss how to start the transition from a real estate agent to a real estate investor. I'll tell you how I started. I started by shadowing a real estate investor. I had a colleague who was buying foreclosures at the courthouse steps, and some of the things I learned from her was how to title search for a property, how to see what liens are on there, where to find those properties, who were the attorneys that had those properties, so that when we went to the auction, we were standing in front of the right crier to buy the proper property. Just to give you an example, the different law firms have different properties. You can go to the courthouse steps and have 10 different criers crying 10 different properties. One of the other things she taught me that I learned was a lot of foreclosures fall off the morning of the auction because a lot of people file for bankruptcy. That's one way to prevent your foreclosure. So it's important to have more than one property. If you're going to go to the auction, you should have maybe 3 or 4 properties that you have in mind. One of the other things that I learned with her is the whole process. So I got to the point where I was actually bidding on properties for her at the auction. Now, you have to be cognizant that you have a maximum price that you are willing to pay for a property. A lot of people get caught up in the frenzy, and you have to know when to stop. So that's where my value to her came in. She wasn't always sure of the value on a property, what the ARV would be, what the after repair value was. So that's where my expertise came in. I would help her run numbers to see what was the max that she would be able to pay for a property. We would also drive by the outside to try to assess how much repair did it need. They bought these properties for fix and flips. So it was important to have all of those numbers and all of that information ahead of time. One of the other things I would suggest is to join a local real estate group. There are several RIAs around the country. There are tons of groups that you can join on Meetup. You can also look at specific groups. I run a group called REN in Atlanta, which is specifically for women real estate investors so that we can support each other. I would also consider checking out Bigger Pockets, join some Facebook groups. You would be surprised how much you could learn from just reading some of the questions and some of the information and some of the responses in some of the threads. I have a couple of groups that I check out periodically, and I go in there and I'll comment, or a lot of times I'll learn something new. You know, if anybody ever tells you that they know everything, they're lying. This industry changes all the time. I'm going to give you a case study on how, as a real estate agent, you can look at something from an investor's point of view. I was referred a listing last summer. I had an agent in my office who knew I was short sale certified and had gotten a lead, and she said, "Lorraine, this is a short sale. I want to pass her on to you because, you know, I don't really know what to do." Well, I went and I met with the client, and lo and behold, I have no idea why this agent thought this was a short sale. It wasn't. Now, these particular people were in pre-foreclosure, but they had 6 weeks to go. So I was able to go in there, assess how much work the property needed, and the owner was willing to do a subject to. Now, subject to is when someone's willing to let you take over their mortgage, and then, you know, you take ownership of the property. So I realized it needed 50 grand worth of work. They were ready to walk away. They were ready to just let it go into foreclosure. Instead, I was able to prevent the pre-foreclosure, catch up the mortgage, take over the property, and put some money in their pocket. And now I had a new project that I was going to flip and put on the market. Most real estate agents, clearly, as you can see, she didn't know what to do. And so it's identifying potential projects, potential ways of how you can help that seller. Just because it's not a traditional listing and it doesn't fit in the box, at the end of the day, we're problem solvers. And that's what a lot of investors do. They help people solve problems. This was someone who was ready to just completely walk away, and I managed to put about $7,500 in her pocket. So that's why it's really important to understand the difference between a good deal, what's a good deal for a potential homeowner, and what's a good deal for an investor. Those are two completely different things. Having a homeowner buy a property that needs some work, that has some built-in equity, that's great. But again, like I said, investors incur a lot more costs that most people just don't. It's part of the business. It is what it is. And that's the beauty of it. When you're an agent that's also an investor, you can look at different options and what's the best way to help someone out. Understanding your end buyer, whether your buyer is going to be an investor, whether it's a homeowner that is looking for a fixer-upper that doesn't need to have a $50,000 spread or doesn't need to have a $100,000 spread, that's completely different. So that's where becoming an investor agent gives you that angle. It gives you the ability to look at different problems, different ways to solve problems, ways to think outside of the. So again, just to recap this module, shadow an investor. That's where I'd start locally. Go to the courthouse steps is number 2. Just go watch an auction, see the process, see what happens, and you got to be in it to win it, right? Join a local real estate group, whether it's a RIA or a meetup. I would also join some Facebook groups. Get in there, learn the lingo, see what people are saying, what are people's challenges. Now, understand some things only an attorney should give you advice on, but it's a good way to get really familiar with what's going on, even locally in your market. I gave you a case study. Actually, I gave you 2 case studies. Think outside the box. How can you help someone where it's a win-win? Not everybody necessarily wants to make money when they're selling a house. Some of them just want to get out. And then learn to properly evaluate what's a good deal for a potential homeowner, an owner-occupant, and what's truly a good deal for an investor. Because at the end of the day, that is the biggest thing that frustrates investors. Getting a deal that has a $20,000 margin is not a deal for them. So I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing you in the next module. Thanks.